It's an election year in New Zealand, and political theater in Wellington is in high gear. At the Labour Party Congress, leader Chris Hipkins took to the lectern to rally his base. His message was resolute. The right-wing government is out of touch. They're inflicting cuts and decline. And he firmly declared, quote, "The fight is on." Labour's flagship weapon for this fight is an expansion to the apprenticeship boost scheme. They've pitched it as a win for working-class trades, deliberately expanding it to cover more women in professions like hairdressing. But the leader of the right-wing ACT party, David Seymour, Labour's supposed arch-enemy, publicly stated he had no problem with the scheme. But beneath all of these campaign speeches lies a cold balance sheet that shows where the political priorities actually sit. Labour's scheme allocates $56.5 million taxpayer dollars every year. That money flows down a pipeline directly to employers, bypassing the worker entirely. The worker's share is a single $1,000 grant. The employer secures recurring monthly revenue, while the apprentice receives a one-time payment. With the vast majority of funds directed toward the employer, the scheme functions as a transactional subsidy for private capital, lowering a business's labor costs instead of directly increasing worker wages. To understand the scale of this proposal, it helps to compare it to the macroeconomic shifts of the last 3 years. This chart tracks funding removed from Maori communities, over $1 billion in cuts, including the Maori Health Authority and a housing program. At the same time, $2.9 billion was handed directly to multiple property owners through landlord tax breaks. If we compare that $2.9 billion landlord giveaway against the workers' $1,000 toolkit, we get a ratio of 2.9 million to 1. Addressing these multi-billion-dollar shifts with a $56 million employer subsidy is the financial equivalent of placing a plaster on an amputation. This discrepancy matches what Chris Hipkins has signaled in private. Away from the campaign rallies, he spoke at a corporate breakfast for elite lawyers. In that room, he pledged policy continuity. He told the lawyers that Labour would not repeat a cycle of wholesale reversals, opting instead to maintain the current government's structural infrastructure decisions. By committing to these settings, Hipkins signals a direct link to 1984, preserving a system of privatization and deregulation that Labour designed 40 years ago. Both major parties are operating under the same fiscal settings. They both use the phrase future budget allowances to describe their spending, which avoids the need to tax wealth or fund large-scale systemic changes. This creates a priority list where corporate employer subsidies are mapped out and costed, but the reinstatement of pay equity for whānau is pushed off to in due course. Under these settings, if you are private capital, you receive a contract. If you are working class or Māori, you receive a promise to revisit the issue later. The Green Party, co-led by Marama Davidson, is presenting a measurable shift from this consensus. Their fiscal plan is anchored by a wealth tax designed to generate $5.147 billion net in its first year. This revenue is earmarked to rebuild the specific health and housing services that were cut. They've also moved beyond general rhetoric regarding Māori outcomes by placing 14 Māori candidates on their list, aiming to put Māori voices directly into the governing structure. In June 2026, the data shows two paths: a managed continuation of the status quo, funded by future allowances, or a move to replace lost services through a multi-billion-dollar wealth tax. The evidence of these financial transfers is available for those who look. For the full audit and the verified record, visit the Māori-relevant.